Okay, the Committee on Elections will now come to order, and Clerk, please call the roll.
Chair Laubenberg.
Here.
Vice Chair Goldman.
Here.
Representative Reynolds. Representative Pat Fallon.
Glad to be here.
Representative Israel.
Here.
Representative Dade Phelan.
Here.
Representative Schofield.
Here.
Okay, a quorum is present. And let's see. Okay, today is pretty much organizational and new members, new committee. We're all kind of new on this, so not new to the legislature, well, except for a few. So I just want to see if any of the members have anything you want to start out saying, or you can wait until the end. At the end, okay. So with that, today we have invited testimony from the Secretary of State, and the chair calls Mr. Keith Ingram. Please state your name and who you represent.
Yes, Chair Laubenberg, Keith Ingram, members of the committee. I'm with the Secretary of State's Office's Elections Division. I'm glad to be here today. I want to thank you for allowing me this opportunity to speak to y'all. First, a bit about me. I'm a lawyer. I've been practicing law for more than 21 years. And I've been 3 years and 2 months in the Secretary of State's office as Director of the Elections Division. And the Secretary of State of Texas is the Chief Election Officer for the state. And as such, it is his responsibility to obtain and maintain uniformity in the interpretation, application, and operation of the election code and election laws outside of the election code. And we have in our division 28 people. We've got 6 lawyers, and then we've got a voter registration section that deals with the voter registration database for the state of Texas. And we have an administrative section, and we have a primary funds and Chapter 19 funds management section. So those are our primary areas of responsibility. And the way I like to think of it, our office doesn't have any investigative or enforcement authority at this time. And so I like to think of us as technical support for Texas elections. So when people have a question, we'll answer their question. We issue advisories. We have seminars. We have a seminar every year for county election officials. We have a seminar every year for city, school, and other political subdivisions. And then we have a seminar every other year for county party chairs. We do that in the fall of odd-numbered years so that they are ready to go for the primary and the even-numbered year to follow. We do detailed election law calendars for each uniform election date, and those election law calendars are a good roadmap of the law applicable to that election, and so it's a good way for election officials to keep current with what they're supposed to do. And then we do guides and handbooks and training for election workers as well as county election officials, and we try to keep all of that current. We do make rules. Often a bill will give us rulemaking authority, and so we do have a formal rulemaking process. And in addition, our office certifies voting equipment for the state of Texas. So once a voting system has met the applicable federal voting system guidelines, then it'll come here, and we do a 2-day certification examination in our office. The first day is primarily technical, and the second day is substantive on the equipment. We do have one small sliver of enforcement power, and that is 31005 of the Election Code, which allows the Secretary of State to take, quote, appropriate action to protect the voting rights of the citizens of this state from abuse by authorities administering the state's election processes, close quote. And that primarily involves a sternly worded letter and a threat of action by the Attorney General if the letter is not responded to appropriately. I have, in my 3 years in the Secretary of State's office, had to write 2 of those letters. One was regarding an election that was in the middle of early voting, and the people who were administering the election were planning to shut it down. And I told them that that was not going to be okay. You couldn't shut down an election. The people who had already voted needed to have their votes protected. If there was some sort of issue about the election, it needed to be resolved after all the votes had been cast. The second time I had to do it was with regard to a county election administrator who was not sending her overseas ballots to military and overseas voters. And so I had to threaten to take action with regard to her. But that's a very rare thing, and it relies upon the Attorney General's office to assist us with anything that needs to be done in court. We do voter education. We've had voter education campaigns with regard to what voters need to be equipped to vote. We had a voter education campaign last year with regard to the acceptable forms of identification for voting. And we had about $2 million of federal Help America Vote money to use for that campaign. And there is no more Help America Vote money available for a similar campaign in the future. 31012 of the Election Code requires us to do an education campaign for voter ID, but unless there's an appropriation, we're not going to have any funds for that effort this next election cycle. With regard to voter ID, y'all might have heard there was a ruling in Corpus Christi. The federal judge down there ruled it to be a violation of the Voting Rights Act. That ruling is on appeal at the Fifth Circuit. The Fifth Circuit has stayed that ruling pending the appeal. We don't know at what point a decision on the merits will come from the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals in New Orleans. Redistricting continues as well, litigation. There's a 3-judge panel in San Antonio that is considering that. They had a trial last summer, and we haven't heard anything about when they're going to rule on maps. What else? The National Voter Registration Act of 1993 is a federal law, and it requires the Department of Public Safety, anyone who comes in for a driver's license or to update the information in the driver's license, to also have the opportunity to register to vote. And in addition, it requires public health agencies to also offer their clients the opportunity to register to vote whenever they do any transaction with whatever public health agency they're dealing with. The Secretary of State, is the coordinator for all of the public health agencies who are required to comply with the National Voter Registration Act, and in that capacity we offer them training materials as well as make sure that they've got a plan for each of their agencies to train their caseworkers with regard to their role and responsibility with regard to voter registration. As I said, we manage a statewide voter registration database. The TEAM system has been in place since 2007. It's Texas Election Administration Management. It is in the process of being redeveloped with a new commercial off-the-shelf software. We will begin the rollout of the new system in May, and we will do it in 2-week increments thereafter through the end of August. So a group of counties will train on the new system and then go live with the new system in 2-week periods beginning in May. And so we hope with the phased rollout process to be finished by the end of August, plenty of time before the November constitutional amendment election. Any questions? That's a brief overview.
That's good. I have a quick question, and y'all, certainly I'll open it up to you. Keith, you talked about the seminars that y'all give to the schools, cities, local voting entities. Do y'all update them on what the latest legislation is that has passed and how it will affect them?
Absolutely. A big part of the seminars, especially in odd-numbered years, is to update the county election officials as well as the city, school, and other political subdivision election officials with regard to changes in the law that have occurred and our interpretation of those, and if we've made any rules that are in draft form at that point for them to consider and to comment on.
So they get that update after every session?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
We also do a big, long memo with regard to every election bill that passed, a brief summary of what the bill was and its effect. One thing that before I came to this job I did not have a proper appreciation for, and that is the complexity of election laws. I told the deputy whenever he was talking to me about taking the job that I would learn this book, and that I would know it at least as well as I know my Bible. I have endeavored to do so, but it is a complicated subject matter.
Yes, it is. Members, y'all have any questions? Representative Dade.
Thank you, Chairwoman.
Feeling. Sorry about that.
Quick question. Can you talk about, one, when your 2015 calendar will be out? Not that I'm checking on it or anything. Right. And how the talk about moving the primary up may impact that calendar if that were to occur?
We expect to have our calendar for 2016 out later this fall. We are anticipating having it out. I believe our county election officials seminar is in July, and our hope would be to at least have a draft for the county election officials to see at that point. It might be a little bit after that. I have to look at the legal director back there.
As far as moving the primary up, is that something that presidential primary?
I know that there is a bill to do that. There's House Bill 3103 last session wanted us, the Secretary of State's office, to do a study of moving the primary date. We have done that study, although we haven't submitted it in writing to you guys. And both the Democratic National Committee and the Republican National Committee came out with fairly draconian sanctions for anyone who moved earlier than the first Tuesday in March, which is where our primary currently is. I've talked to both the Republican Party of Texas and the Democratic Party of Texas, and they are satisfied with March 1st as the primary date. Neither one of them wants to experience the draconian sanctions that the national parties would impose on them if we were to go earlier than that.
Representative Schofield.
Well, first of all, Mr. Ingram, I want to thank you. You've always been very helpful and very responsive whenever I've asked for information in the past. I know that you're a great source of statistics and also of election law in Texas. And so I appreciate your willingness to do that, and I'm sure we'll be seeking a lot of that as the session goes forward. My question is kind of broad, so I apologize in advance, but you mentioned the counties, and of course that's where all the action happens. Can you kind of lay out a little more what your relationship is between your office and the counties and the communication and sort of how that works and what it is you do that helps them get their elections done?
Sure, absolutely. People think of like November's election in 2014 as one election statewide. It's actually 254 separate elections, and primaries, can have as many as 500 separate elections. So it is not a unified system. We're very much in Texas. We've got the counties are in charge of the day-to-day business of registering voters. The counties are in charge of doing the elections. Our role is to give them advice and assistance. We issue regular advisories for important dates that are coming up, and so we try to make sure that they have the information in advance, and then of course if they ask any questions. As I said, we're not an enforcement agency, but the counties generally want to get it right, and so our best leverage with the counties is that they feel like if they do it the way that we advise them to do it, that's safe harbor, that's going to be okay. And so our best leverage is that they want to do it well.
For a long time, starting with HAVA and then going through TEAM and everything, things were constantly changing and evolving. And I know a lot of the counties were having trouble keeping up. They were doing their best, but it seemed like there was a constant need to get one county or the other up to speed. Kind of where are we now? Have things sort of stabilized, or how are we doing?
It's hard for me to say because the 3 years that I've been here, it's been constant motion, and it remains so. It does seem to have settled down a little bit. With regard to the Help America Voting Act requirement for accessible equipment in the polling places, the counties are well familiar with that. They're used to it. They gripe about the programming cost, but they understand what's required of them. A lot of the smaller political subdivisions, we've got a city of 600 people that's in a larger county, and they don't understand why they have to pay for voting equipment whenever they're just a small entity. But the way the statute is worded now, to get an exemption from the accessible voting equipment requirement, you have to be in a smaller population county, no matter how many folks your particular entity has.
Okay. Any other questions, members?
Yeah, just
Fallon.
Mr. Grimm, thank you for coming today. I appreciate it. Do you have any opinion, or would your office have any opinion on early voting? I think that we have about 12 days of early voting, and a lot of folks that are constituents of mine ask why so many.
Right.
And would you have any thoughts on reducing it maybe from 12 to 7 or something like that?
We don't have an opinion on that. The system that we have with regard to early voting began, I think, in 1987. It went statewide by 1991, and it's kind of multi-layered. So counties that have a certain number of population, a bigger county, will have Saturday and Sunday automatically during the early voting period. Smaller population counties will also have Saturday and Sunday voting if they have 15 registered voters ask for it, so it's not automatic with regard to them. Larger counties will have 12 hours a day the second week of early voting. Smaller counties will not, unless, again, they're petitioned by a certain number of registered voters. So the system that we have that's developed over the last 25 years or so is pretty flexible to the needs of different sized counties. The statute actually says that early voting is supposed to begin on the 17th day before the election and end the 4th day before the election. But for a Tuesday election, that 17th day always starts on a weekend. Mm-hmm. So it actually starts the Monday following, which is the 12 days that people are used to for early voting.
So when did that statute pass? How long has that been on the books?
Well, I'm not sure. It gets tweaked a little bit every session. The basic framework has been in place for a long time, since the early 90s.
So we didn't have early voting in Texas until the 90s?
That's right. And Texas has been one of the, pioneer states with regard to early voting in person without excuse.
Does the statute say that, it begins the 17th day prior and the 4th day, that it has to be every day in between those 2 points?
No. For larger counties, yes. For smaller counties, only if petitioned.
So there's different standards depending on the population of the county?
That's right.
Okay. And then,
what I mean with the election code, it's always nuanced.
And the other question I had for when you said, when people go get their driver's licenses, of course, we give them an opportunity to register to vote, and then the public health clients as well. Is that a federal law or is that state law?
That's federal law, the National Voter Registration Act of 93.
93, okay, thank you.
So the early voting time period, that's state decided, not federally
That's right.
mandated? Okay.
That's
Yeah.
a follow-up
Vice
question.
Chair.
Thank you very much for your testimony and being here today. To follow up on Representative Fallon's question, is it true to say that early voting has increased every single year that it's existed? Is that safe to say, or we're pretty much in line with it?
I don't know. It's been about the same for I don't know, a good 15, 17 years. It's not changed much except a little bit on the margin.
As far as the number of people who have early voted?
Now,
That's what I mean.
the uptake on
The
early
uptake,
voting
right.
opportunity has definitely increased. The last
Right.
several elections, of the voters who vote in a particular election, more than 60% have voted early, and 37% have voted on election day. So the uptake has increased. It's been 63% or so since 2008, so it might have leveled off, but yes, more people vote early than vote on election
Great,
day.
that's what I was asking for. Thank you.
Any other questions? All right.
All right.
Thank you very much.
Thank y'all again. Look forward to
Appreciate
working
it.
with you.
All right. And I know we're going to have a lot of a lot of other opportunities to ask a lot more questions as the bills come flowing in. So thanks for your time. Appreciate it. Okay, if there is no other business for this committee, then the House Committee on Elections is no other business, right? Stands adjourned, subject to the call of the chair. Thank you, guys.
Great job. Good work, Chair.
That's my idea of a hearing.